mysterious mind. I don't know what that means.
Broadcasting live from a Chinese-made microphone high atop the Sioux Empire. I am Cussing with Hussing here with my host, Constant Mayhem, and very special guests. We have Jennifer Guskin. Right? Am I saying that right, Guskin? Or did I slaughter it?
Yes.
Okay. And it was
Yes,
like
that's
Guskin, or if there's like a German. Okay. Just making sure. Jen, we appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we feel honored that you would come on to Phantom Facts and talk about your experience, what you've gone through. Obviously, everyone that saw the YouTube thumbnail knows that we're going to be talking about just the epidemic of child trafficking in the United States of America. That as of 10 years ago, you were called crazy for even bringing up. Yeah. People thought you were Bill Clinton. Tom Hanks, and then you see some of the names that have, been leaked out, and it's just, you have no clue. I don't know if you follow the work of Ashton Kutcher, and his work, and he's just finding hundreds of kids that have been kidnapped, or are being used for exploitation. So we appreciate you coming on the show. I guess we'd like to start from the beginning. Like how does something like this happen? You were born in America, correct?
Honestly, a lot of my history, I go based on what I was told. What I was told is I was born in Nassau County, New York, and I was adopted as an infant. And I was adopted as an infant by a couple who essentially they sold me to various individuals and entities throughout my childhood. I grew up on Long Island, and I spent some of my childhood being voted to islands off of Long Island to be experimented on. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights. And that was pretty much much of what I remember is my much younger years. It's due to the depths of the abuse. I believe I underwent MK Ultra type of programming. So my memories are very fragmented. So what I speak on is usually something that I've reviewed a number of times in my head, and I try to emphasize the fact that it is what I remember, and I don't have much in the way of evidence for what happened to me, but the way I see it is if what I remember is accurate, I can't be silent. I'm no better than the people who are committing these crimes if I do stay silent. I hope every day that I'm crazy and that what I'm remembering isn't real. But if it is, I have no choice but to talk about it and do what I can to expose it.
Jen, my father didn't as we grew up, he didn't remember anything before the age of 12. And it wasn't until his mid 40s he started getting complete memories. And then after that, there was reconnection with other family members he had not known about. And it was a very painful experience for him. And my dad is, an amazing man. And I just remember that series of time was rough for him. And so, I can't imagine as these things fragment back, what you're going through. But this is very brave of you to do, because obviously these are not good people, at all. And you've experienced that down to the closest level. What is like your earliest just regular memory as a child? Because you said a lot of this was fragmented. Do you have any just regular memories?
Well, a lot of what would happen was it on the outside it seemed very normal. From an outside perspective, it seemed like I had a fairly normal life, but privately it was not normal in any shape or form. At least, what I now know is that it wasn't normal. Um, for example, I went to a Hebrew school daycare, so I have some memories of that. I have some weird memories of, it must have been dreams that I had when I was still in my crib as a very young child. Um, so I do have some active, like, I try to differentiate between memories proper and either flashes or flashbacks. Flashes are just images that I don't really know whether they're memories or not. I just kind of store them for, later evaluation. And then I have flashbacks, which I have reviewed enough times that I can say with some degree of certainty may have actually occurred to some degree. So, and then there's, memories which, are from what I believe to be basic normal memories that haven't been repressed or messed with.
And now you were told that you were adopted, right? You don't remember the adoption or anything like that. You were just told by your adoptive parents.
From what I was told, my biological mother was studying to be a nurse. She was going to college up in New York, and essentially, due to her pregnancy, she wasn't able to keep me. Gave birth to me, I believe, at the same hospital that she was doing some degree of work at. My uncle arranged my adoption, and a close friend of my uncle is the one who delivered me.
Oh, wow.
And then you had no contact with these people whatsoever after.
When I turned 18, I was given the wristband that was on my wrist when I was an infant that apparently they had forgotten to cut off. I looked up the name of my 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 biological mother, and I spoke to her and I reached out to her, but there's been no DNA testing, and I haven't spoken to her in a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, it's
Pretty much not since I've started remembering things.
yeah,
Wow.
that's what now. You said that you were raised in Long Island. You were doing things that you considered normal, but now looking back, were not normal whatsoever. So obviously, you were groomed from before your cognitive skills were clicking to think whatever you were experiencing was normal. What, like, looking back, what type of things do you look back on and be like, oh, that's very odd? Or
Well, one specific example that I thought was normal was that there would often be guests that come over to the house, and I would be told to show them how much I love them. And I would go into a separate room where nobody was, and I would be expected to service them, um, stuff like that.
were you traveling a lot? Were you being, or were you
Yes.
moving? So, like, how often would you say you would be traveling?
Um, that's difficult to answer. When I was born, from what I understand, my father was working as an accountant for McKin or in some I don't know if it was accounting or data, some kind of combination of the two, I think, for McKinsey and Company. And we moved from Merrick, New York, to when I was 6 months old to London for a year. And I lived in London for a year, and then I moved back to Merrick. Um,
Were
ended
you
up in some. Go ahead, sorry.
were you the only child in this family?
Eventually, I ended up with a younger brother.
Okay. Through birth, or what was it, adoption too?
Adoption as well.
Okay. All right. And
Um, sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just sort of curious, like, as to, just so you're a single child, so they could just, it's horrible. And
Well,
so go ahead.
so I went back and forth for a little bit between this one house. I don't know exactly where it was. Um, And then I went back and forth between Merrick and Woodmere, both in New York, settled in Merrick. But during this time, I vacationed all across the globe. I believe by third grade, I had traveled over 50 countries. So I had done a lot of traveling as a young child.
And were you the same type of expectations? People would come over and you'd be expected to show how much you love them while you were visiting all these different countries.
Um, I don't remember if people would come over and I would be expected. Um, I think when I traveled to these other countries or these other places, I was more brought out and not, in like didn't stay in the hotel room, if that makes sense. I was brought out to other party areas or event areas or venues and stuff like that where they would use me.
You're talking about mind control, and we've dabbled very early in the show about the early process of the bureaucracy getting set up and the infrastructure getting set up to install these mind control areas. Obviously, it was like very heavy, and in Dallas, it was heavy in Los Angeles, and in New York, it was also being extensively used. When you say that you experience this mind control, what do you mean by that? Like, is there flashbacks you're having of you know uh,
Like in a
things being done
hospital
to you?
or what?
Yeah.
Well, some of the clearest memories that I have that I believe, you know, um, played a key role in my programming or my conditioning, I should say, is I remember being brought to facilities off of Long Island. There was one particular place that I went to that I was actually quite fond of compared to the others. And this one particular facility, I remember being on a medical table, and the way that they had it set up was so that way I could see the moon in the sky overhead as it traveled through the sky, sometimes directly, sometimes reflecting off the ocean. And I would be on the medical table and they would be, doing whatever it is that they did to me, and I would just disassociate to the moon. And I believe that was one of the ways that they taught me to disassociate from things, which, from what I understand, is a big part of the mind control process.
That's interesting. I never even thought about that. Being able to disassociate. I suppose in order for you, that explains the fragmented memories. Would you say, how old were you when you remember them,
Oh
doing?
gosh,
Is there any age reference?
it's as young as I can remember. It's as early as I can remember. It's I have a very
One of
difficult time giving an age. Pardon?
like one of your first memories. Yeah, that's interesting. Now obviously, like you've had your moment of awakening and understanding that, and the beautiful thing is the internet has exposed a lot of this. They can't control the content coming out when it comes to MK Ultra and how they were operating and the tests they were running, and it's almost to the point now they're not even trying to hide it. So when was your awakening, realizing that like you're going from, oh, wait a second, is that what they were doing?
Well, I probably in 2015, 2016, I started having what I called random daydreams. I had inklings, I had general ideas, but I had nothing really to base it on, and I just kind of dismissed them as random daydreams. When the DNC leaks happened in 2016, I started realizing that the random daydreams that I had may not be random daydreams. And then I started weighing essentially coming forward if I should, and if I did, how to go about doing it.
Now, you mentioned, you've were experienced and survived Lolita Express, Epstein Island. What in particular made you realize that you were a part of that trafficking ring?
Um, well, to clarify, I've been on Lolita Express types of flights. I don't know if I've been on Epstein's proper, but I have been on other flights where inappropriate engagement with children has occurred. In regards to the Epstein Island aspect, um, I went there on a cruise with my family when I was about 12 years old. We went there on a shore excursion. I went on multiple shore excursions at the same time, so I don't remember exactly what happened on Epstein Island compared to the other islands that I went on. However, I for a so to be clear about that, I don't know exactly what happened on Epstein's Island compared to the others.
Was it your foster parents, or did they actually adopt you?
They're adoptive. They weren't my foster. They adopted me as an infant.
Did they ever bring up like, "Hey, what are you doing?" or like, "What's going on?" or "What are people?" Or was it just they just sort of let you go on your own adventure? Or
In regards to where?
like when you mentioned that when like people would come over, or like your
Oh,
visit
they would
other
just be in the other room. Somebody would come over and I'd be told so and so's coming over. Make sure you show them how much you love them. And then they would come in and we depending on the house or where we were, we would go into a separate room and everybody would stay in like a dining room or the kitchen, another plausible deniability room that was away from where we were. And I would show so and so how much I loved them. There were other situations where I would be brought out of the house or sent out of the house, and I would come back with essentially rolls of cash to bring into the house and put on my parents' dresser before going into my bedroom and going to sleep.
Did you ever read the Franklin cover up?
No, but I know of it. I know
Um,
some of it. I'm not incredibly informed, but I know some of it.
it's just interesting the correlations of how foster kids or adopted kids were being used in Nebraska to transfer money, to transfer pictures. They were given them, given envelopes of cash, or they're, envelopes of photos, and then they would deliver it to the superintendent of a school district, or other horrible human beings that were involved with this. And this is, you're saying this is all happening in Long Island, New York, as you're growing up, correct?
Yes,
When did it
yes.
did it ever stop until you left, or what? I mean, like,
I don't really know. After sixth grade, things get very, very, very phase. In seventh grade, I was too much of a disturbance. I spoke out too much. I acted out too much. I was too much of I caused too many problems, and they moved me to a school with for children who acted out too much. So in seventh grade, I ended up hospitalized, and then in the hospital school system,
they
and then the
blamed you.
alternative learning program. Pardon?
They blamed you. You're the problem child. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
what a horrible system.
I,
Well, that's what I was
as a
wondering.
teen,
That's so do you think, or I mean, it seems like so right around that time it was coming together, maybe realizing who the bad guys were, and then the adoptive parents, your parents, they couldn't have that. So it's what's the easiest way to handle the problem, ship the problem out and put it in a crazy home, and then no one's gonna believe the stories that come from this child of the fucking buffoon things that were done or that we let happen under our watch. That just makes me sick to my stomach. Ugh. I'm so sorry
and
you had to go through this. I really am.
and they start that system very, very early. Like for me in second grade, when I started acting out, that was when they decided to start shoving pills down my throat.
Yeah.
So when I continued to fight back, when I continued, because I didn't know that something was wrong, but I knew something was wrong. And I acted out, and they just, would increase my medication and, threaten hospitalization and, pull me out of the school system and all that kind of stuff. And they very much, not only they really do like to make it completely systemic, where they take children who had been adopted or in the foster system or in the CPS system, and they literally go after us. They target us with abuse. Then they medicate us into silence. If we don't silence us, they hospitalize us into submission. And then, if we don't submit, then, they try and figure out what other extreme they can go to. For me, they kidnapped my daughter, and they held her hostage. So I mean, and then when that didn't work, they had my husband, file a police report to have me arrested, and I was held political prisoner for a year and a half. So I mean, they do anything and everything they can to keep control over their system. And it takes enough people standing up to say, we see this happening, this is not okay, this is not acceptable, and we're going to do something about it.
I mean, there's a the story of, I'm sure, Corey Feldman in Hollywood. And there's a clip that where he's talking about his experience, and I just love the way it's on The View, right? And so here are these, supposed to be compassionate, caring women that would of course look out for the innocent among them, and then Feldman comes out. I just want to play a little bit of this clip. Let's see here.
People that were the people that did this to both me and Corey that are still working. They're still out there, and they're some of the richest, most powerful people in this business.
And they are.
And they do not want me saying what I'm saying.
And then back then, Barbara Walters, she's the main leader of The View at that time.
Right now.
Are you saying that they're pedophiles?
Yes.
And that they're still in this business?
Yes.
That's what. Yeah, and that's what you're saying in your book. When you talk to when you talk to
and
parents,
they don't want me here right now. Trust
Corey,
me. They want me dead.
There are a lot of parents out here who want to put their kids in this business. Their kids are cute. They're great actors. Da, da, da. What would you say to a parent who just has the best of intentions, who's coming here with their child? If you're saying that there's a lot of predators in this industry.
It's a many-feathered bird. Okay? Be careful what you wish for. That's what I'll tell you. Don't go into it with naivety. Don't go into it thinking that it's all roses and sunglasses.
You're damaging an entire industry.
That's essentially what I wanted to show, is how mad she was at him. You're damaging an entire industry. How dare you? How dare you bring up something like this when, sure, maybe 3/4 of the people there are just sick fucks that hire sick fucks that create a sick fuck industry. And you get people like Feldman coming out, and then on the opposite end, where you're raised, I'm sure, was it like a nice suburban neighborhood where you were raised, pleasant, yes, happy with the Johnsons? There was, no one would have guessed. I mean, was there any do you remember any moment where like you were like, I don't want, as a child, maybe like traveling and not wanting to go? Or do you remember any?
Oh yeah, there were plenty of there. There's one specific situation that I remember, that at my cousin's house, that if we ended up exiting through a certain door in my cousin's house, I knew that the night was going to be hell. I knew it was going to be an awful night. I knew people were going to get hurt, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I remember there's one time they tried to make me leave the house through that door, and I refused. I threw a fit. I would not leave through that door. I would not leave the house. I would not go. I would not go that night because I knew that something bad was going to happen, and I didn't want to go. And eventually it got to the point where I stopped going out in general. I wouldn't go to the grocery store. I wouldn't go to see friends. I wouldn't leave my house. I literally stayed in the house for days, if not weeks, if not months, because of just absolute fear of going out and what would happen if I did.
No, you said that you had a brother, right? Or an adopted brother. Did that ever feel like you had a friend or a partner, or maybe it was going to get easy, like you had like a protection, like a brother would bring? Or was that poor brother just another pawn in the whole scheme, and they were doing the same things to him that they were doing to you?
Well, my my father made it a point to make sure that I had no allies in the family. He did everything he could to drive a wedge between my brother, my everybody and I. He's I could get into him for quite a while. He's still trafficking people. He's a real piece of mm.
Yeah,
He
what's his
essentially
name?
after
What's his name? I'm sure.
Corey Corey Guskin. He after I went public, he had to leave the country. He's currently living in Ecuador.
How does he spell Corey? How does he spell it?
Corey.
Oh, so that's how a bitch spells it. So that makes sense. Mine is Kory. So that's horrible.
So there was not like what, like, I don't know. I'm sure I don't know, but I mean, I think if it runs this sick and deep, I'm sure there probably were no family members that you felt were safe, or an aunt or somebody that you could whisper to and just cry out. I'm sure they were all just riddled with just this fucking nastiness. So I mean, dang it, that just, because you always hope. I think I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say the wrong thing or come off as, but it's just like, you would think, the way my brain's working, I'm like, man, I would hope there was just somebody in that fucking family tree that we accidentally ran into that wasn't so messed up. But it doesn't sound like that was the case. And it was
I guess
rough.
like for people like, us that are just, going about our daily lives, is there anything that, like, as you're going about your daily life, you notice and you're like, oh, maybe that child, there's something going on with that child? Or, I mean, do you see that in day-to-day function?
It's hard to explain. I'm not really. I still don't really get out much, to be honest. The only time I really, see children interact at all is like on a playground, which is when they're, having fun, and I don't really, see them in their normal mode and all that kind of stuff. But no, whenever I see a child, there's always a part of me that wonders, if they're okay and all that kind of stuff. It really sucks because I'm on a hyper alertness, hyper awareness. If I see a child that looks different than the rest of their family, I wonder if that child was trafficked, or whether it was, a consensual situation or not. So I mean, it sucks. It's a really crappy way of looking at life, but it's something that something I wish more people thought about, to be honest.
I live in South Dakota, and there's laundromats along the truck stops areas because it's pretty barren over there. And like if you do laundry over there, they always have that little clipboard. And I remember a few years ago, I went to the laundromat, and on that clipboard there was a little tag where like, "Are you a victim of human trafficking? Rip this tag off." And of course, none of the tags were ripped off. And I thought, of course, no one's going to rip the tag off while they're, being trafficked at a laundromat. But it was just such a weird thing, because you think, man, nothing like that could happen in the good old Midwest. And then there was stories of there was a woman in this town of 3,000 in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. She'd forgotten her phone along the beach of this little lake, so she went back to get it, and a vehicle pulled up. 4 men came out and tried to kidnap her and tried to wrestle her in the van. And it just so happened that someone came along and they skedaddled. And that was in the middle of nowhere. And they say human trafficking is probably the number one issue in the United States right now. I don't think people realize.
It's also very, very, very subtle, because to bring up the CPS issue, we have situations where CPS, Child Protective Services, is specifically targeting people with foster backgrounds, with adoption backgrounds, and they're opening cases for completely BS reasons. Like, for example, in my case, they said that I tested positive for drugs. When I have the drug test results, everything came back negative. And I demanded the drug test results, and they kept, passing the buck down the road, saying, oh, the next person will give it to you. The next person, oh, I don't have it this time, I'll have it next time. And eventually, And they told me they didn't want follow-up drug testing. They didn't want parenting classes. The only thing they wanted of me the entire time was for me to stop posting on social media. And at this point, I was talking about what I had gone through as a child. So, I wouldn't stop, and they took my daughter a few months later, and they lied through their teeth, and they put her in foster care. They tried to get, parental rights terminated. They tried to, be able to put her up for adoption, and, and it's a cycle, it's a system that CPS intentionally puts in place. And, I mean, another example is that we have 85,000 missing children at the border, just, reported, and that's just at the border alone in what, maybe the past 4 years, and I'm being generous. I mean, if that's just what they're telling us what's going on at the border, what's really going on at CPS?
Well, and we've been covering CPS for quite some time on Phantom Facts, just because I also experienced the wrath of that beautiful agency, and was shocked at how it operated and how it legally operated. And I don't know if you know who Spike Cohen is at all or not, but there is a organization called youarethepower.net, and they go after CPS in all the states, and they have liaisons and all this. It's quite a beautiful organization that's popped up, because what we found is reported is, what was it, May? Like 7.5 million kids were removed, and that's just what CPS agrees with. That doesn't include removals to family members. It doesn't include removals for under 2 weeks, or removals for under a 2-month period in some states. So we're talking almost 20 million kids in the United States are legally being removed. So, we're either to expect that legally being removed. Yes, exactly. Without repercussions, and exactly how they go about it in your case, where they lie to the judge to authorize a removal, and then they push the court date down and down and down and wait until, I mean, I don't know what your full experience was. Are you still, do you have custody of your daughter now?
Yes. It was a long, long, long process. Thank you. Thank you. I ended up submitting the evidence that I had to the court, and, the case got moved from a family court magistrate to the chief administrative judge of Baltimore County, who took adoption off the table. And however, CPS still was not happy with this. I started publicly linking how I was adopted as an infant and sold and provided to Epstein's ilk, how many other children who've been through the CPS and foster industry have also been taken from loving, caring, compassionate families to then be given to a family that's going to provide them to Epstein's ilk as well. And CPS started panicking. They convinced my husband to file a police report. I ended up spending a year and a half.
When I just want to interrupt that, because when people say that, like, what the first thing CPS does in a case like this is they try to destroy the couple. Yep. They will they will do whatever. They'll visit each other during opposite times. Whenever there's a fight, the first person there is the CPS. Oh, it's okay. Tell me about it. And it is very divisive. And it's a huge stress on a relationship when your daughter is, or in my case was my son, and you're going through this type of situation. Obviously, you see, and it's
sorry,
shitty.
my daughter is down here right now and is not going back up to bed. She's supposed to be in bed. Iris, up to bed. Please go.
If you need to handle it, we can cut you.
I'll be right back. Yes, she needs more water.
All right, we're good there. Anything that's coming to your thought here, May, about this whole situation?
This is just fucking heartbreaking, man. Like, it's my questions. It'd be tough and it's hard, but like, I've wondered if she's looked into the family. Like, was the mom, because it had to have stemmed from somewhere, right? It always does. It always, little seed gets water and then it catches fire. Or like, did this happen to the mom and then she ended up just getting groomed and then eventually, like, this was her match, this fucking other terrible man, or it's just that's what's running through my mind is like, how did this fucking stupid ugly tree start? And it's like, because I know women can be nasty and part of it all, but it's like, it's a fucking pimp ring is what it sounded like. It was, like the parents were pimps and they were just like, hey, you go make us money, you go do these fucking terrible things. And, if not, you're going to get probably, punished or locked away or force fed, God knows what. And it's heartbreaking. That's
Well,
where my mind is, just where it stems. It's just, like.
Well, I'm curious, Jen, because like it may brings up an interesting point. Like as we get to know CPS and how they operate and the money they make off of this system of legalized kidnapping, like are there people out there where it's just hey, I need a kid for my pedophile ring. Throw me a couple, and the CPS workers are illicit. Do you think there's a link between that? Because why were you adopted to this particular family? What were they? What were they doing before this? Who were their friends so that they benefited from having a young girl adopted into them?
Well, I can't speak for every situation. I'm sure there are situations where there are families where they take children from loving, caring, compassionate families and specifically give them, like, for example, in Iris's case, they had a family lined up who worked for, if I recall correctly, Shepherd Pratt, which is, if I understand correctly, a local psychiatric facility. So they who were directors. One of the parents was a director at Shepherd Pratt, like one of the major psychiatric facilities. So they literally, it's perpetuating the cycle. They know what they're doing. They're doing it on purpose. In their reports, they're calling me delusional for thinking that CPS is opening a BS case, but they're literally saying Iris is a substance exposed newborn. All tests came back negative, but mother is delusional because she's not trusting us for our refusal to provide the drug test results. So, stuff like that. Or mother is delusional because she has blood work showing that she was not extremely malnourished, but we're saying she is extremely malnourished. Ignore the blood work that the mother has. We're the state employees. So she's delusional.
It's really an evil system because they, in the process of ripping their child away, they paint a horrible picture of some of these and then in the same instance, I know in the communities where there's people that their kid accidentally drank their meth bong water and were returned to them after a month. And so it had to have been just a nightmare for you to have gone through what you went through in the adoption agency and then see it being threatened against your own blood. Now, when did this happen? Like, was this around the same time you were having these flashbacks and
I went public on October 23rd, 2017. I gave birth to Iris on December 29th, 2017. CPS opened their substance exposed newborn case that day. And 4 months later, in April of 2018, CPS took her, claiming she was extremely malnourished. Once again, I have blood work showing that's bullshit. I also have blood work showing a severe decline in health the day after she was removed. Very, very bad. However, the doctor who was making all the calls in the cases says, she had a miraculous improvement in health minutes after removal.
isn't that interesting? That's great. Oh, wow. And then so you start coming public with your experience, being on Lolita Express flights, being trafficked, over, what'd you say, 50 countries and under the age of 10, around something
Roughly,
like that.
yes.
Yeah. These, of course, these things that have been repressed start coming back to you. The MK Ultra thing I thought was interesting because, when we think about it in our minds, it's this idea that, you're shuttled away to this secret area in a warehouse with no windows and, bright lights, and, you go through like 3 weeks and you come out, very Manchurian Candidate type of situation. And what I'm
Yeah.
seeing, and I'm curious as to your perspective, but what I'm seeing now is that these mental health clinics that are state funded are the new MK Ultra centers. Do you feel like, I don't know what your experience has been with Iris?
Um, I very much believe that in general, it's not just the state-funded mental health clinics. It's the state-funded childcare system, the state-funded welfare system in general. I think that the system is specifically set up to keep cycling these children in over and over and over again. And I think it's intentional. I don't think the system is broken. I think the system is set up this way and it's working exactly as intended.
That's a scary thought. I think a lot of people want to believe that it's the overall tenure of it is for the good, for the good of the kid. But I think as we research it more and more, we're coming to your conclusion as well. Now, you said you're in an active lawsuit against them as of now, right? So
Yes.
how long did you have to deal with this threat of removal from your child? How many years?
Well, she was gone for about 5 years.
Oh,
While I was locked up, she was returned to her father. I was in Baltimore County detention for about 4 months, and then I was in Spring Grove Psychiatric Facility for a year during COVID.
oh.
So that was fun.
And what was
Um,
the reason they put you there? What was the
and I was deemed incompetent to stand trial due to an unwillingness to work with my attorney.
and your attorney was
Essentially,
provided, right?
my attorney was a public defender. Essentially, I told my attorney that I wanted to testify, and she did not want me to testify. So I was deemed incompetent to stand trial because I refused to stand trial without giving my side of the story.
And they didn't allow you to go file for another defender.
No. Well, in Baltimore, the way it works is once you are deemed incompetent to stand trial, you are then placed under one particular attorney who handles all of Baltimore County's incompetent to stand trial cases. When she received my case, I sat down and spoke with her, and she outright said, she is not incompetent. She is competent. She is capable. She knows what she's talking about. And, but the evaluator, once again at Spring Grove, oh, forgive me, I forgot a big key detail. The person who evaluated me for my competency was working for the same agency as CPS.
Of course.
So how soon when this started did they do the mental eval? Was it like within the month?
I was in there for about mid-July until about early October. Early October is when they did the evaluation. My court date was October 31st, where I was ruled incompetent to stand trial. I had to wait about 10 days to be moved, and then I was in Spring Grove until November 5th, 2020.
And I want to emphasize, because I emphasize this too, like in any animal in the animal kingdom, when you remove the babies from like the mama bear or from any animal, they all go nuts. Like it's a horrible, you see their reaction. They fight, it's chaotic. And it's the same thing with humans. Like it's when your child is removed, there's a moment where it is a surreal moment, and of course you have to fight by their rules. You can't just do a man up type of end all resolve all. This is it's years of litigation, and then they play these horrible little games with you, and you're curious the whole time as to why they're fighting you. And then you start to realize, I think like you, Jen, that there's alternative motives here. There's something else. These people are getting paid, and they're getting paid well. Just like did you? I don't know if you saw that clip right before the show with John McAfee, where he sent all that spyware with the laptops and discovered all of the trafficking that was going on. No wonder that guy's apartment in Florida mysteriously collapsed. Like this guy, who knows how? I think we do have an idea now. Do you feel like any bit of relief? Because you said this whole process with your daughter started 2017, around that time.
Yes.
So now we're 2024, and do you see progress around your community as far as people's view of what's actually going on with Epstein and with just child trafficking, or what's your feelings of it? Is there any positivity that comes from it?
Well, like I said, I don't get out in my local community. I'm mainly online. The community I'm in online is very much truth and transparency oriented. They are very well aware of the trafficking. They are when I made my post in October 2017, I expected it to be, like just fall between the cracks, a quick blip and everybody would forget about it and it would be, just water under the bridge type of situation. But the amount of support and the amount of people who are actually like receptive and listening and wanting to know more and asking questions and not being dismissive was I never would have expected that. I never would have expected the amount of support that survivors have been receiving. I never would have, I got out from being locked up, and all of a sudden there's all these survivors coming out, and they're all speaking, and they're rallying together. And it's not just survivors; it's also the people who've gone through the CPS cases and the CPS trafficking as well. They're also speaking up. They're much less afraid, and they're we're working together to end this. And I'm definitely very, very, very encouraged in what I'm seeing. I'm very optimistic. It's fantastic. It really is. I never in a million years would have thought that there would be this much support and this many people who are trying to fight back and who are trying to do something.
I think it's a beautiful thing to watch our country slowly start to wake up. And I get like the online community does not represent, the general population. But I think if you went around and just said Epstein Island to the general population today, 80% of them would say, "Oh yeah, absolutely."
He didn't kill himself.
Didn't kill himself. Yeah, it's that is and the fact that Alex Jones was bringing stuff like this up in 2011, 2012. And it was, I knew the reaction people had back then. And now here we are 12 years later. And not only is it accepted, but you're starting to see slow movement in the opposite direction. And it feels like it's just going to pick up speed. It's going to, as much as they try to tamp it down or brush it away, it's just not going to last. So I think it's a beautiful way to end the show. So, Jen, thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything you would like to plug? Give people your Twitter handle to follow you.
Yeah, my X account is x.com ctsurvivor17. I also have a Substack where it's kind of a bit of a journal where I'm just kind of throwing random thoughts out there. It's not really organized, so don't expect much from it. But that one I think is jennifer.guskin at substack.com or whoever the Substack links go. But I did want to say thank you. Thank you so much to everybody who's watching. Thank you to everybody who's fighting. Thank you to everybody who is doing what they can to combat child trafficking. You're the reason why we're able to come forward. You're the reason why we're able to come together. You're the reason why we're able to make a difference. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. We are just honored that you would go and take this time with us. May anything you'd like to add before we head out of here?
No, I just a big thank you, for telling your story and agreeing to come sit down with us. And like I said, it breaks my heart, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through this and everything. And But, turning the page, picking up, fighting back, letting them not get you down, letting them not, not let them have the final say. And I love that, and it'll just go up from here. And like you said, there's a beautiful group there that's coming together and helping hopefully fix this fucking shit show of a mess that we have going on here. And I'll be
there. It is. There it is. You held your anger in so well today. I'm so proud of you. It was so good.
No, hard not to just
Oh, it's infuriating. It's infuriating. I'm glad to see like you're using all this horrible negative, selfish acts people did on you, and just turn it around and just be part of something that we don't even know where this thing's going, but it's moving. And so it's nice to meet other fighters on this front line. So thanks again, Jen. And you're welcome on our show anytime, any new development or anything you want to talk about. Phantom Facts would love to have you. So thank you again, Jen.
Thank you so much.
It's Jennifer Guskin. You follow her on X. I called it Twitter. She corrected me. And I think we finish off with, as always, the Kiffness.
If you don't subscribe to Phantom Facts Society, then don't talk to me or my son ever again.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. This is our advice to take the following steps. If exposed, remove
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.
I'm an Indian outlaw, half Cherokee and fuck.
Liberal.